Have you ever noticed the quiet exhaustion that settles into your bones when you agree to something your spirit is desperately trying to refuse? What if the kindness you so freely offer to others is the very thing quietly breaking you from the inside? If you have ever felt entirely drained, invisible, or like you are only valued for what you can provide, this is for you. Most people do not realize that saying yes when every fiber of your being wants to say no is not an act of love. It is an act of fear. Stay until the end, because the final realization about why you do this may change the way you see your own worth forever. We live in a world that praises the endless giver, the one who always steps up, the one who carries the weight so others do not have to. You know this feeling well. Your schedule is full of obligations you resent. Your energy is spent on people who only reach out when they need something fixed, heard, or handled. You swallow your own exhaustion and offer a smile, convincing yourself that this is what good people do. But in the quiet moments of the night, when the room is still and there is no one left to help, a hollow ache remains. You are surrounded by people, yet you feel completely alone. Buddhist wisdom teaches us to look deeply into the root of our actions. We are often told that attachment is the source of suffering, but we usually think of attachment as clinging to physical things or specific outcomes. What about our attachment to an identity? We hold tightly to the identity of the Savior, the reliable one, the one who never causes trouble. We attach ourselves to the deep-seated belief that if we are useful enough, we will finally be safe. We will finally belong. We confuse the transaction of our energy with the unconditional presence of love. Imagine a beautiful deep well in the center of a bustling village. From dawn until dusk, travelers and villagers come with their heavy buckets. They lower their ropes, draw the cool water, and walk away satisfied. They praise the well for its reliability. They declare it the most important thing in the village. But they do not love the well. They love the water it provides. If the well were to suddenly run dry, the villagers would not sit beside the stones and offer it comfort. They would simply pack up their buckets and move on to find another source. This is what happens when we build our lives around being purely useful. In the workplace, you take on the extra project because you want to be seen as indispensable. In your relationships, you suppress your own emotional needs, terrified that if you become an inconvenience, you will be abandoned. You become a function, a tool. You bend and twist yourself to fit into the spaces others leave behind, hoping that one day they will look at you and see your true human value. Think about your own life. Who are you when you are not helping someone else? Ask yourself, if you stopped being useful tomorrow, who would still sit beside your empty well? Pause. Breathe. The next time someone asks something of you, do not answer immediately. Observe the tightening in your chest. Notice the familiar panic rising. Let the feeling rise without making it your identity. You do not have to abandon yourself to keep someone else close, because true peace is not found in endlessly bending to the will of the world. It begins when you start to question why you are bending in the first place. And this is where the next truth begins. Here is the truth few people want to face. You cannot buy love with exhaustion. What if the harder you try to prove your worth, the further real connection moves away? We live under a heavy illusion that love is a wage paid only to the hardest emotional worker. We convince ourselves that if we just do enough, fix enough, and hide enough of our own pain, then eventually we will be deemed worthy. We say yes to the unfair compromise. We accept the burden that is not ours to carry. We nod in agreement while our inner voice is screaming no. We do all of this because we are terrified that our true, unpolished self is simply not enough. In Buddhist thought, much of our suffering comes from grasping at illusions. One of the deepest illusions we hold is the idea of conditional worth. We believe that we must constantly justify our existence through our utility. To survive this fear, we construct a false self, a perfectly accommodating, endlessly patient mask. But this creates a profound tragedy. When you wear a mask to be loved, the love you receive never actually reaches you. It belongs to the mask. You are praised for your selflessness, but inside, you feel entirely unseen. Imagine a gardener who tends to a dying tree. Instead of watering the roots, the gardener spends every day painstakingly painting the dry leaves a vibrant, perfect green. Travelers walk by and admire the bright color. They praise the gardener for maintaining such a beautiful tree. But the paint does not nourish the wood. The roots remain starved in the dark. The tree is suffocating under the weight of its own artificial perfection. We do this constantly in our daily lives. You listen to a friend's problems for hours, even when your own heart is breaking, because you believe being a good listener makes you valuable. You stay quiet when you are treated poorly by a partner, convincing yourself that your endless patience will one day be rewarded with genuine affection. You take on the extra work, the extra stress, the extra emotional labor, hoping that this time it will be enough. You are painting the leaves, desperately hoping it will somehow water your soul. But you cannot water the roots with someone else's approval. Think about your own life. Look closely at the relationships where you feel the most drained. Ask yourself, are you loved for who you are? Or are you loved for what you tolerate? What are you afraid will happen if you stop being so easy to rely on? When you say yes out of pure obligation, are you actually building a connection, or are you just negotiating a peace treaty? Pause, breathe. The next time you feel the urgent need to prove your value, do nothing. Do not rush to fill the silence. Let the urge rise and watch it drift away like a cloud across the empty sky. Stop trying to force the door open, because the love you have to constantly work for is not love at all. It is simply an emotional transaction. And beneath every transaction is a quiet, desperate fear of empty hands. What if the quietest terror of the human heart is the fear of having nothing to offer? Here is a difficult truth. We do not just say yes to please other people. We say yes because we are absolutely terrified of standing before the world with empty hands. We have convinced ourselves that if we are not actively giving, fixing, or providing, we cease to exist. We equate stillness with uselessness, and uselessness with being left behind. So we fill our hands with tasks, burdens, and the emotional weight of others, believing that carrying these heavy loads is the only way to anchor ourselves to the people we love. You know this panic. It is the anxiety that floods your chest when someone says they do not need your help today. It is the restless guilt you feel when you finally try to rest, as if you are stealing time that belongs to someone else. You over-prepare for every conversation. You rush to offer solutions before someone has even finished explaining their problem. You carry the financial, emotional, or logistical burdens in your family, convinced that if you drop the weight, everything will collapse. But underneath that noble sacrifice is a quiet, desperate voice asking, "If I have nothing to give you, will you still want me here?" One of the deepest lessons of Buddhism is the profound freedom found in emptiness. We spend our lives clinging to things, our possessions, our relationships, our roles. But Buddhist wisdom reminds us that a cup is only useful because of the empty space inside it. Emptiness is not a void to be feared. It is the natural state of peace. When we desperately cling to our identity as a helper, we crowd out the space for simple, unconditional presence. We suffer because we refuse to let our hands be empty. Imagine a traveler wandering through a dark forest. To guide the group, the traveler holds a heavy iron lantern. It burns their hands and exhausts their arms. But they endure the pain because the light is necessary. Eventually, the long night ends. The sun rises, bathing the entire forest in warm, golden daylight. But the traveler refuses to put the lantern down. They keep walking, gripping the iron handle tightly, sweating and trembling under the weight. They are no longer carrying the lantern to light the way. They are carrying it because they do not know who they are in the daylight without it. How often do we carry lanterns into the daylight? In your friendships, you continue to play the crisis manager long after the crisis has passed. In your relationships, you keep trying to save a partner who has already found their footing, or worse, someone who refuses to walk at all. You keep gripping the heavy iron of your obligations because you are afraid that without it, you are invisible. Ask yourself, what are you holding on to simply because you are afraid to let go? Think about your own life. Who would you be if you walked into a room with nothing to offer but your quiet presence? Is your constant need to be useful bringing you peace, or is it feeding your fear of being unloved? Pause, breathe. Gently unclench your fingers. Let the feeling of uselessness wash over you without fighting it. Do your part, then release the outcome. Let the lantern fall to the soil. Because you are not a machine built for endless production. You are a human being, worthy of rest. But stepping into the daylight with empty hands requires us to look closely at the disguise we have worn for so long. 4. The mask of the helper. What if the most generous version of yourself is actually a hiding place? Here is a truth that is hard to hear. Sometimes our constant kindness is not a gift to others, but a shield for ourselves. We often say yes to everyone because being the helper feels safe. It keeps us in a position of quiet control. If you are the one giving advice, fixing the problems, and carrying the load, you never have to be vulnerable. You never have to admit that you are struggling. We say yes to avoid our own pain, hiding behind a mask of endless generosity. You know this mask well. You wear it when you become the strong friend who never complains. You wear it when you are the reliable co-worker who stays late without being asked. You become the caretaker in your family, absorbing everyone else's anxiety so they do not have to feel it. You convince yourself that this is an act of love. But deep down, you are terrified that if you take off the mask, if you stop being the one who fixes everything, people will look at you and see someone broken. You use your usefulness as armor. In Buddhist thought, this is an attachment to the ego disguised as selflessness. We cling so tightly to the identity of the savior that we forget how to simply be human. Buddhism reminds us that true compassion must be boundless, which means it must include you. When we use helping as a distraction from our own suffering, it is not true mindfulness. It is a form of running away. You cannot offer genuine peace to the world while you are secretly at war with your own exhaustion. Imagine a beautiful, ancient stone bridge stretching over a wild, turbulent river. For years, heavy carts, weary travelers, and wandering animals cross the bridge. The bridge absorbs the weight of every passing traveler. It stands firm through driving rain and bitter winds. But deep inside the stone pillars, hidden from the world, fine cracks are beginning to form. The bridge believes its only purpose is to bear weight. It never asks the river to slow down. It never asks the travelers to tread lightly. And one day, quietly, it simply collapses into the dark water. Not from a sudden storm, but from the invisible accumulation of holding everyone else up. You are the stone bridge. You absorb the emotional weight of a difficult relationship. You carry the stress of a chaotic environment. You let people step over your limits because you believe that is what a strong person does. You hide your cracks behind a smiling face, terrified that if you show weakness, people will abandon you. You confuse being heavily walked upon with being deeply loved. Think about your own life. Are you helping people out of genuine joy, or are you helping them because you do not know how to be vulnerable? Ask yourself, if you admitted you were exhausted, who would stay to help you repair your cracks? Is this endless giving bringing you peace? Or is it feeding your fear of being seen as fragile? Pause, breathe, observe the heavy armor you wear. You do not need to be strong for everyone today. Allow yourself to feel the weight you are carrying without rushing to fix anyone else's pain. Let the feeling of being fragile rise, and know that it is perfectly okay to be human. Because true strength is not found in never breaking. It is found in having the courage to set the heavy load down. But ignoring your inner voice for too long carries a quiet, devastating cost. 5. The cost of ignoring your inner voice. What if the voice you are most used to silencing is the only one trying to save you? Here is a quiet, painful truth. Every time you say yes when your spirit desperately says no, you are quietly abandoning yourself. You convince yourself that you are just keeping the peace. You believe you are avoiding conflict. But the conflict does not disappear. It simply moves inward. You know this feeling physically. It is the sudden drop in your stomach when a familiar name asks for yet another favor. It is the tightness in your throat when you smile and agree to a plan you dread. You swallow your boundaries to make someone else comfortable. You suppress your exhaustion to keep a relationship intact. But over time, a heavy resentment builds. You stop trusting your own instincts. You become a stranger to yourself. You are wandering through a life built on tiny daily betrayals of your own soul. In Buddhist thought, mindfulness is not just about observing the outside world. It is about intimately knowing your own inner landscape. Buddhism reminds us that when we constantly override our own truth, we create a profound spiritual friction. We fall out of alignment with our true nature. True peace requires deep honesty with ourselves. When we silence the inner voice to please the external world, we lose the path. You cannot be connected to others in a meaningful way if you are entirely disconnected from yourself. Imagine a beautiful, fast-flowing river making its way toward the ocean. It has a natural rhythm. It knows its path. But one day, people ask the river to bend, so they build a wall of heavy stones. Then someone else asks for a diversion, building another dam. The river accommodates. It allows itself to be blocked, redirected, and divided into 100 tiny streams to serve everyone else's needs. Eventually, the river loses its current. It no longer flows. It becomes a shallow, stagnant pool, cut off from its own power and unable to reach the sea. We do this constantly in our everyday lives. You agree to take on a massive project at work, even though your body is begging for rest, because you fear disappointing your colleagues. You say yes to a one-sided friendship that drains your energy because you feel guilty for outgrowing them. You force yourself to maintain a cheerful, accommodating disposition, swallowing your true feelings until you feel completely hollow inside. You are building dams across your own river, cutting yourself off from your own vitality just to keep others satisfied. Think about your own life. What part of you is desperately trying to be heard? What would happen if you stopped building dams for everyone else and let your true feelings flow naturally? Is this constant compromise bringing you peace, or is it slowly draining your spirit? Pause. Breathe. Notice the tension in your body right now. Observe the quiet resentment without judging it. Let the feeling rise without making it your identity. You do not have to silence yourself to be safe, because inner peace is not the absence of external conflict. It is the absence of internal betrayal. But reclaiming that voice means facing the very thing you have been avoiding for so long, and this requires a different kind of courage. 6. The courage to disappoint. What if the hardest, yet most necessary step toward inner peace is allowing someone else to be upset with you? Here is the truth we spend our entire lives running from. You cannot live authentically without eventually disappointing someone. We say yes because we cannot handle the heavy guilt of a simple no. We imagine their anger. We anticipate their rejection. We twist ourselves into impossible knots to avoid the brief discomfort of their displeasure, willingly trading our long-term peace for their short-term comfort. You know this struggle. It is the agonizing hours spent drafting a text message, trying to find the perfect, gentle way to decline an invitation. It is the panic that sets in when someone gives you the silent treatment because you finally set a limit. You feel completely responsible for their emotional state. You believe that if they are upset, you must have done something wrong. You rush back in to fix it, to apologize, to smooth things over, retreating back into the safety of yes, just to make the tension disappear. Buddhist wisdom teaches us a vital lesson about non-attachment, not just to physical things, but to the emotions and reactions of other people. We suffer deeply because we believe we can control how the world perceives us. Buddhism reminds us that we are only responsible for our own actions and intentions. True acceptance means recognizing exactly where your responsibility ends and someone else's begins. Letting go means releasing the illusion that you are the sole architect of another person's happiness. Imagine a great ancient tree standing on the edge of a high cliff. As the seasons change, a fierce, cold autumn wind begins to blow. The tree does not try to hold on to its dying leaves just to appease the wind. It does not shrink or apologize for standing tall. It simply remains rooted deep within the earth. It lets the dead leaves fall. It allows the wind to howl and rage through its bare branches, trusting its own foundation. It lets the storm happen without trying to control it. When you begin to say no, a storm will inevitably arise. In your family, when you refuse to mediate another argument, there will be pushback. In your friendships, when you stop being the one who always compromises, they may call you selfish. At work, when you leave exactly on time, people may be displeased. That is the wind blowing. But their disappointment is their storm, not yours. You do not have to abandon your roots just because someone else is uncomfortable with your boundaries. Think about your own life. What are you afraid will happen if someone is truly disappointed in you? Ask yourself, are you living your life, or are you just managing other people's reactions to you? Pause, breathe. The next time you must decline a request, do not over-explain. Do not apologize for your limits. Stand firm in your roots. Let the storm pass without becoming the storm, because true freedom is not found in keeping everyone happy. It is found in having the courage to let them be disappointed, knowing you are still safe. And when you finally stop trying to control how you are perceived, a beautiful shift begins to happen. 7. Reframing love and utility. What if true love has absolutely nothing to do with what you can provide? Here is a beautiful, quiet truth that challenges everything we have been taught. We have spent so long equating love with utility that we no longer know what it feels like to just be held. We measure our worth by our output. We believe that if we are not actively solving a problem, offering support, or making someone else's life easier, our value drops to zero. We view ourselves as emotional currency, meant to be spent until we are entirely empty. You know this heavy conditioning. You feel it when you are sick, resting, or simply too exhausted to help, and a creeping guilt tells you that you are taking up too much space. You feel it when you are afraid to ask for comfort because you believe you must always be the strong one. You have been treating yourself as a tool, and you have allowed others to treat you the same way. You have forgotten the profound difference between being useful and being cherished. In Buddhist thought, we are reminded of our inherent wholeness. Buddhism teaches that every living being possesses a fundamental, unshakable dignity that does not need to be earned. You are not a transaction. You are not a sum of your helpful actions. When you let go of the attachment to being useful, you create space for authentic connection. True love, in the spiritual sense, is a state of deep, unconditional presence. It does not ask you to prove your right to exist. Imagine a wild lotus flower growing in a hidden, silent pond deep within a mountain forest. No one comes to harvest it. No one picks it to place in a decorative vase. No one uses its roots for medicine. It provides no tangible service to the human world. It simply blooms in the stillness. It opens its petals to the morning sun and closes them under the night sky. It is not useful. It does not hustle to justify its place in the water. Yet, it is perfectly whole and entirely beautiful exactly as it is. We must learn to see ourselves as the wild lotus. In your life, you are allowed to simply exist without constantly paying rent for your space through favors and emotional labor. When you stop rushing to fix your partner's every mood, you learn if they can sit with you in stillness. When you stop volunteering for every extra task, you discover if your presence is valued just as much as your productivity. You find out who loves you and who only loved what you could do for them. Think about your own life. Who in your world makes you feel completely safe, even when you have nothing to offer? Ask yourself, can you allow yourself to be loved when your hands are completely empty? Is it possible that your mere existence is already enough? Pause. Breathe. The next time you feel the urge to earn your place in a room, simply sit still. Do not offer a solution. Do not make a sacrifice. Let the quiet moment settle around you, without trying to fill it with your effort. Because the right people will never ask you to buy their affection with your exhaustion. They will love you simply for being. And stepping into this realization leads us to the final transformation. 8. The return to authentic peace. What if the exhaustion you have carried for so long was never yours to hold? Think back to that quiet, hollow ache we spoke of in the beginning. The bone-deep tiredness of always saying yes when your spirit was desperately trying to refuse. For years, you have lived under the crushing weight of the belief that your worth was directly tied to your utility. You have poured yourself out, drop by drop, hoping that if you just gave enough, fixed enough, and carried enough, you would finally be seen. You believed that by making yourself indispensable, you would finally be loved. But the journey of Buddhist wisdom is a journey of profound unlearning. It is the realization that you do not need to earn your right to exist. The peace you have been desperately searching for, in the approval of others, has been waiting for you in the very place you were afraid to look, within your own quiet stillness. By letting go of the mask of the endless giver, by releasing the heavy iron lantern, and by allowing your hands to finally be empty, you are not losing your identity. You are clearing the space for your true self to emerge. Return to the image of the deep well in the center of the village. For so long, you believed your only purpose was to let others draw from your depths until you were completely dry. But what happens when the village sleeps? What happens when the buckets are put away and the demands finally stop? The sky darkens, and a soft, gentle rain begins to fall. The well does not need to work to catch the rain. It does not need to negotiate or prove its worth to the clouds. It only needs to be open. It only needs to rest. The water returns, simply because it is the nature of the rain to fall and the nature of the well to receive. You are allowed to receive. You are allowed to rest without the heavy burden of guilt. When you finally stop saying yes out of fear, your daily life will begin to change. Your circle may become smaller, but it will become infinitely deeper. You will no longer be surrounded by people who only love the water you provide. You will be surrounded by those who sit beside you in the quiet, simply because they cherish the stillness of who you are. The panic of saying no will slowly fade, replaced by a deep, unshakable self-respect. Think about your own life as you move forward from this moment. What would happen if you finally laid down the heavy armor of being needed? What if you decided, right now, that your days of buying love with your own exhaustion are permanently over? You do not have to chase what is already leaving. You do not have to constantly hold up the sky so that others can walk beneath it freely. Pause. Breathe. Let the tension leave your shoulders. Let the feeling of being enough wash over you. Trust that you are entirely worthy of love. exactly as you are, even when you have absolutely nothing left to offer. Make space for your own peace today. If these lessons touched your heart, share this video with someone who may need a little more peace today. You can let go now.